Virgo, I need you to sit down for this one. Not as a figure of speech, not as the kind of opening line designed to create urgency before delivering something that turns out to be far less significant than the build-up suggested. I mean it in the most literal, most grounded, most genuinely preparatory sense of those words. Because what came through when I sat with your energy today arrived with a quality I was not expecting, and what I was not expecting was not the difficulty of it, it was the irony. The specific, almost breathtaking irony of a situation that looks from the outside, from the surface, from the angle this person is currently presenting to the world, like one thing. And that turns out, when you go beneath the surface of it, when you follow the energy all the way down to where the real thing is actually living, to be something almost exactly opposite. They don't want to see anything about you anymore. That's what they're presenting. That's the posture they've adopted. The blocking, the removing, the deliberate construction of an environment in their daily life where your name, your face, your presence in any form, digital or otherwise, has been systematically eliminated from their immediate field of awareness. And Virgo, the reason they've done this is going to reorganize the way you understand this entire situation. Stay with me, because this reading goes somewhere that most people never get to see from the outside of a dynamic like this. And by the time we reach the end of it, I think something that has felt confusing or painful or simply inexplicable is going to become very, very clear. Let me tell you how this arrived, because the quality of what came through is itself part of the message. I sat down with your energy, and the first thing I felt was not sadness, though sadness is present in this reading. It was not anger, though that is present too. The first thing I felt was the specific, almost dizzying quality of contradiction, of two things existing simultaneously that seem like they should cancel each other out, but that are instead feeding each other, intensifying each other, locked in a relationship with each other that is producing exactly the behavior I am about to describe. On one side, an intensity of feeling that I would describe without hesitation as overwhelming, not casual, not manageable. Not the kind of feeling someone can simply decide to dial down because continuing to feel it at the level it exists has become inconvenient. The kind that arrived at some point and simply did not leave. That installed itself in this person's interior world and has been sitting there drawing attention to itself at the most inopportune moments, refusing to behave like something that should have passed by now. On the other side, a decision, a clear, deliberate, I have thought about this and this is what I am going to do kind of decision to create as much distance as possible between themselves and everything that feeds that feeling. To remove the triggers, to eliminate the fuel, to make it structurally harder for the feeling to sustain itself by cutting off everything that gives it something to hold on to. The blocking is not rejection, Virgo. The blocking is the most extreme form of being unable to handle how much they still feel. Let me take you into the real beginning of this, because understanding where this decision came from requires understanding what preceded it, what built the pressure that eventually produced this particular release valve. There was a period not long ago in the timeline of this situation where this person was attempting something, attempting to maintain a version of their relationship to you and to their feelings about you that was functional, livable, that allowed them to move through their days without the full weight of everything they feel pressing down on them constantly. They were trying to find a way to coexist with what they feel in a manner that did not require them to either act on it or be entirely undone by it. It was not working. Every time your name appeared, every time something reminded them of you, which was more often than they were comfortable with, because you have a way of being connected to things in someone's world that they did not fully realize until they started noticing how often those connections surfaced. Every time they encountered something that carried your energy in some form, something small and seemingly unimportant that nonetheless landed in them with the full force of everything that is unresolved between you, the strategy of managed coexistence failed a little more. The feeling did not cooperate with the management plan. It had its own agenda. And its agenda was to keep directing this person's attention back to you, back to what was said or done or left undone, back to the version of things they are having such difficulty finding peace with. And eventually, they made a calculation. If the feeling won't stop responding to the triggers, remove the triggers. If every encounter with something connected to you destabilizes the carefully maintained equilibrium, make those encounters structurally impossible. Build a wall not between you and them, but between them and the constant reminder of everything they have not yet made peace with. That wall is what you are currently looking at, and it was never built to keep you out. It was built to keep the feeling in. I want to speak to the specific thing they are trying not to feel, because this is the part that came through with the most clarity, and I think it is the center of everything this reading is about. It is not indifference. They are trying to protect themselves from feeling. Indifferent people do not need walls. They do not need to block and remove and systematically eliminate every trace of someone from their environment. Indifference is its own protection. It requires no effort, no construction, no deliberate and sustained maintenance. It simply exists passively as the absence of feeling rather than as its presence in a form too large to manage. What this person is trying not to feel is the opposite of indifference. What they are trying not to feel is how much you still matter to them, how present you are in their interior world despite every effort they have made to reduce that presence, how consistently, how stubbornly, how almost offensively their own feelings refuse to cooperate with the narrative they are trying to build about where things stand and what they are and are not going to allow themselves to want. They are building this wall because without it, the feeling gets too loud, too close to the surface, too close to the point where it would require a response from them that they are not currently willing or able to give. And the response they are avoiding is not nothing, Virgo. It is not a small or casual or easily handled thing. What they would have to do if they allowed themselves to feel the full weight of what they actually feel, if they stopped creating structural distance between themselves and the reality of it, is something significant. Something that would require real courage and real vulnerability and a real willingness to address what happened between you in a way that could not be comfortable, or controlled. They are not ready for that yet. And the wall is how they are managing the not readiness. I want to sit with something here before we go further because I feel it arriving specifically for different groups of you, and I want to honor those different versions of this situation rather than collapsing them into one. For some of you, what this person is not ready to face is an apology, a real one. The kind that requires them to stand fully in the accountability of what they did without softening it or redirecting it or wrapping it in enough justification that it stops being a genuine apology and becomes instead a performance of one. They know what they owe you. They know the conversation that needs to happen, and they are not yet capable of having it with the level of honesty it deserves. So instead of attempting it badly, which would cost them the small amount of dignity they are currently clinging to, they have chosen to remove themselves from proximity to everything that makes the debt of that apology feel urgent. For others, what they are not ready to face is something more fundamental than an apology. It is a truth about what they actually want. A truth that, if acknowledged fully, would require them to make decisions about their life, about their choices, about what they are and are not willing to risk in the direction of what they genuinely feel that they are not currently equipped to make. Because the truth of what they want from you is not a small or manageable want. It is the kind that reorganizes a life. And the reorganization it would require is terrifying to someone who has not yet developed enough confidence in the feeling itself to trust it as a foundation to build on. And for a few of you, what they are not ready to face is simply you. The specific, real, fully present version of you that exists right now, having been through everything you have been through, having arrived at the clarity and the strength and the particular quality of not needing them that you currently carry. They are not ready to stand in front of that version of you and feel the full weight of what they let go of. The distance they are creating is the only way they know how to manage the confrontation with that reality without being completely undone by it. Have you felt this energy shifting around this person, even at a distance? That specific quality of a presence withdrawing, not because it has stopped caring, but because caring has become too expensive to manage in proximity. Let me know in the comments because I think what I am describing is resonating for a number of you in a way that is rearranging something you had been interpreting very differently up until now. I want to speak now to something that I feel is essential to your own well-being in the context of this reading, Virgo, because I do not want to spend this entire time inside their experience without returning fully to yours. Finding out that someone has blocked you, removed you, created deliberate distance between themselves and everything connected to you carries a particular kind of sting, regardless of what the reason behind it turns out to be, even when the reason is, as I have described, essentially the opposite of rejection. Even when the truth beneath the surface is that the feeling is too large rather than too small, the sting is real. The experience of being on the receiving end of that kind of erasure, however motivated it actually is, lands in a place that has nothing to do with logic and everything to do with the simple human, deeply felt experience of absence. I want to honor that sting before we go any further into what it means or what comes next. because your experience of this moment does not need to be immediately converted into understanding in order to be valid. You are allowed to feel the impact of what has happened before you arrive at the interpretation of it. Both things are true simultaneously. The sting is real, and the reason behind it is also real, and neither cancels the other out. Inhale with me for a second, Virgo, because here is what I want you to hold on to as we move through the final layers of this reading. The distance this person has created is not the end of the story. I feel that clearly, not as reassurance manufactured to soften difficult information, but as a genuine reading of the energy in this situation and where it is actually heading. What they have built is not a permanent structure. It is a temporary one, the kind that gets built when someone is overwhelmed rather than when someone is finished. And overwhelmed people, when they have had enough time inside the walls they've constructed to finally exhale, to finally release some of the pressure that drove the construction in the first place, eventually have to confront the thing they were trying not to feel. You cannot outrun yourself indefinitely. The interior landscape catches up always. And when it does, when this person has run out of new ways to create distance between themselves and the reality of what they feel and what they did, they are going to have to face both of those things directly. That facing is coming. I do not feel it as something distant or theoretical. I feel it as something already building behind the wall, already accumulating the specific pressure that precedes a real reckoning with an unresolved truth. Let me speak to what that reckoning is going to produce, because the energy moves forward from this point in a specific direction, and I want to make sure you understand where things are actually heading rather than leaving you with only the current moment. When this person finally stops running from what they feel, when the structure they have built to manage the feeling proves itself insufficient, which it will, because feelings of this size and this stubbornness always outlast the structures built to contain them, what is going to happen is not a quiet, private, internal resolution that never reaches you. It is going to reach you in some form, through some channel, maybe directly, maybe through someone connected to both of you who has been watching this situation from the outside and who finally says something, maybe through a change in the wall itself, a crack that appears and then widens until the wall is no longer serving its original purpose. The specific form of how it reaches you is something I cannot determine with precision from where I am sitting. But the direction of the energy where this is actually going underneath the surface of the current distance is clear. It is heading toward you, not on their timeline, not according to their readiness, which has already proven itself unreliable as a guide to when things actually happen in this situation, but according to the much older, much less manageable timeline of what is actually true and what, in its truth, refuses to stay silent indefinitely. I also want to speak to something about the people around this situation, because their energy is present in this reading, and what they are observing matters to the full picture. There are people in this person's life who have noticed the behavior I am describing, who have seen the deliberateness of it, the effort behind it, the specific quality of someone working harder than the situation would seem to warrant to create distance from something that, if it were truly unimportant, would require no effort to be distant from. And some of those people are asking questions, either out loud, directly to this person or quietly within themselves that this person does not yet have comfortable answers for. Because the cover story, whatever version of this they are presenting to the people around them as the explanation for the distance and the blocking and the deliberate removal, does not fully account for the intensity of the effort. Cover stories rarely do. And the gap between the story and the observable reality is visible to the people paying close enough attention. The truth of what is actually happening is more visible from the outside of this person's management strategy than it is from the inside of it. And that visibility, that slowly growing external recognition of what is really going on, is going to add its own pressure to the pressure that is already building inside the wall. As I bring this reading toward its close, Virgo, I want to leave you with something specific, something that I feel is the truest and most grounded thing I can offer you in the context of everything that has come through today. Do not let the wall become your story. What I mean by that is this: the distance that has been created, the blocking and removing and deliberate erasure, is this person's story about their own inability to manage what they feel. It is not a statement about your worth. It is not a verdict on what you deserved or what you are owed or what the truth of your value is in the context of this connection. It is a behavioral symptom of something happening in someone else's interior world that has nothing to do with your worth and everything to do with their current limitations. You are allowed to understand that intellectually and still feel the impact of it emotionally. Both are true, and both are yours to carry for as long as they need to be carried. But I want to make sure that the interpretation you walk away from this reading with is not the one this person's behavior is suggesting on the surface, which is that they no longer care. They care so much that they have built infrastructure to manage it. That is not indifference. That is the opposite of indifference, wearing the costume of it. And your discernment, when you let it speak without the interference of the sting, already knows that. If this reading moved something in you today, please share it with a Virgo who needs to feel this energy right now. And leave me a comment below. Tell me how this landed. Tell me if this reframes something you had been interpreting differently before today. Tell me what it feels like to understand the real reason behind something that may have been causing you pain. I read every single word you share with me, every comment, every story. I carry your energy with genuine care long after this video ends. Until next time, Virgo, the wall was never about you being too little. It was always about them being too overwhelmed by how much. And there is a very real difference between those two things. One that changes everything about how you hold this moment going forward.